7 years ago, folding a digital display was a gamble with physics, one that usually ended with a shattered screen. Today, titanium biomimetic hinges allow glass to bend thousands of times without fatigue. If you want to see how this transition impacts the broader tech market, make sure to subscribe to the channel. While Samsung and Google fought through the early experimental phase of this category, Apple waited. But after nearly a decade on the sidelines, their entry is finally scheduled for September 2026. This shift comes because the traditional slab smartphone has reached a plateau. With year-over-year improvements often limited to incremental camera tweaks, the market for flat phones has essentially flattened out. For Apple, this is about more than expanding their product catalog. To justify the years of research, they are developing a device meant to eventually replace their own flagship iPhone. This chart illustrates the financial scale of that move. At a projected price of roughly 2,15,000 rupees, or $2,400, analysts expect Apple to claim 34% of the entire foldable market's total value in its very first year. But Apple is arriving late to a market where the standard for perfection is already incredibly high. Rivals like Oppo and Honor have already spent years refining their own hinges to achieve what they call a zero-feel crease. Apple's strategy relies on letting those competitors pay the high costs of early research. By waiting, they can enter a mature category where the hardest engineering problems have already been solved by someone else. Inside Apple, engineering teams reportedly discarded the clamshell flip prototype. They found the design forced too many compromises on battery density and camera hardware, trade-offs that didn't align with their goal for a premium device. Instead, they moved forward with a passport-style layout. This design uses a 5.5-inch interactive outer screen that opens into a 7.8-inch inner canvas, effectively creating an iPad mini that can fit inside a pocket. To make that canvas viable, Apple is utilizing a specific hardware advantage: Samsung's unreleased 8.6th generation OLED panels, which are significantly more efficient than the screens found in current folding phones. To solve the crease, Apple uses ultra-thin glass and a viscoelastic adhesive, responding dynamically to pressure. When folded, the adhesive stays soft to reduce fatigue. Under stress, it hardens to provide support, filling microcracks and keeping the crease under 0.15 millimeters. These choices suggest that Apple's goal isn't just to build a phone that folds, it's to create an ultra-thin computing tablet that happens to be pocketable. Achieving that tablet-like experience requires extreme thinness. Unfolded, the device measures just 4.5 millimeters, thinner than even the current iPad Pro. But that thinness creates a major hardware sacrifice. There is no physical room to house the depth required for a periscope zoom lens, leaving the Fold with only a dual-lens camera system. The ultra-thin bezels also make it impossible to house the sensors required for Face ID. As a result, the Fold moves authentication back to a Touch ID sensor embedded in the side power button. Apple is betting that internal power can compensate for these physical limits. The 2-nanometer A20 Pro chip is designed to handle intensive, on-device AI processing without the thermal overhead that usually plagues thin devices. These hardware compromises were made to clear space for a software shift. With iOS 27, the Fold will finally support the true side-by-side multitasking that Apple has historically kept exclusive to the iPad. By waiting 7 years, Apple let its competitors pay the tuition fees of the foldable era. They allowed the market to absorb the high costs of early hardware failures and trial-and-error hinge designs. This delay allowed Apple to skip the public durability scandals and the years of consumer skepticism that followed the first folding screens. They didn't have to spend years iterating on hinges that might fail in the real world. Instead, Apple waited for the global supply chain to reach maturity. They allowed manufacturers like Foxconn and Samsung to perfect automated assembly lines before ever placing a production order. This timing ensures that when Apple enters, they aren't beta testing. They are launching a product optimized for high profit margins into a category that has finally become predictable. The massive launch price also serves a broader economic purpose. Financial reports suggest the Fold is designed to act as an ultra-premium anchor, intended to pull the average selling price of the entire iPhone lineup higher. This mirrors the strategy used for the iPod and the Apple Watch. Apple arrives after the category has already been established, then resets the baseline for what a premium product in that category should be. With the Fold, Apple is effectively signaling that the development of the traditional flat smartphone has plateaued. The industry's center of gravity is moving away from the slab and toward the canvas.